Hey everybody, it's Monica with MEK Magnet, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to go from this
to this.
Nano-Hold technology. It's a new revolutionary material that we use for new aluminum vehicles. So our lineup of the 2018 Plus Jeep Wrangler JL and JLU, and the 2022 Plus Jeep Gladiator JT. We also do the Ford Bronco, the two-door, and the four-door. So Nano-Hold technology is a lightweight ballistic resin utilizing Nano-Hold technology, which is a sticky gel that allows this material to stick to anything smooth. This is very lightweight. We've got a great printed design. The hold is amazing. Once this is on, this is there to stay. So this is designed to have a very strong hold. So which means that there is a technique to installation and removal. I'm going to go through that next. I've laid out my material on a level, clean tabletop. It could be a very clean floor as well, anything that you have to let the material just unroll and rest for a minute. While I wait for that, I'm going to prep my vehicle. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure I clean off any waxes, any detail chemicals, any residue or debris, anything that's on it. I'm going to use a microfiber cloth and a cleaning solution. You could use any kind of clean, non-residue leaving solution. I like to make my own. It's 1 part vinegar, 4 parts water, and just a squirt of dish soap, and that seems to clean everything really nicely. The things that you want to make sure are off your vehicle are anything that prevents anything from bonding to it. So if you have something, if you went through a car wash or have a detail chemical in your vehicle that claims to, give you super shine, water beads off, it's rain repelling, anything like that, there's a really good chance that it's got chemicals in there that will chemically prevent the armor from bonding to it. So we want to wash that off. And here's how I do it. So just a couple quick squirts on the microfiber cloth. I want to make sure I go through all of the areas, all the edges, anything like that. Give it a good wipe. If you think that you might have some of these chemicals off that you might not be cleaning off with a simple solution, you can also do a diluted isopropyl alcohol. That again is a 1 part alcohol to 4 parts water. And how I do that is I mix it in a spray bottle. I'll squirt it on the vehicle. I use 1 microfiber cloth to wipe it while it's wet. And before it evaporates dry, I use a second dry microfiber cloth to wipe that off, and that gives me a really nice clean. Okay, so we've got the vehicle clean. Now we're ready for the armor install. I recommend start with small pieces. So we give you a lot of flags, logos, all kinds of little cool extras. What I would do is play with these first. Peel the backing, see kind of how well it sticks. Get used to seeing what the material feels like. Stick this to various different surfaces, peel it off, make sure you're comfortable with what you're expecting, because once you get to start using the bigger panels, it's a little bit harder. So once you have the techniques down, it's going to go really easy. For the installation, I recommend your first time doing it with 2 people. The reason for that is you'll have an extra set of hands to help you level, line up, and hold the armor in place while you're ready to stick it on one side. If you don't have someone to help you, there's a couple different things you can do. The first one is when you peel out your panels, you can actually push the panel through the material. Now, when I do that, the plastic backing stays on it. So then this way you can peel back a small section of the backing, stick it to the vehicle, like so. Now, this panel is going to stay in place while I maneuver it and try to line it up. And then once I'm ready, I'll hold the one section in place, I'll peel back the rest of the plastic, and then I'm good to go to have that panel stay. Okay, so now we're ready for the install. I like to start from the front and move my way back. I do the driver's side first, and then I do the passenger side, but there really is no madness to the method, so any way that you feel comfortable, you're good to go. All right, before handling any of the panels, you want to make sure you have really good, clean, dry hands. Fingerprint oils will rub off on the sticky side of the material and could potentially gum it up and prevent that section of the panel from bonding properly in the long run. So you want to make sure really clean hands. You can also use rubber gloves. Just make sure they're the ones that don't have any kind of a dust on them. Okay, so we're going to peel our panels out. And when you peel your panel out, it's really important to try to get a nail underneath the material. This also applies to when you're removing the panel off your vehicle, right? You don't want to pull it by the corner. Some of our designs are direct print on the ballistic resin. Some of them are actually printed on a special vinyl and laminated onto the material. So you don't want to grab and pull by the edge, just in case you might catch the vinyl part and accidentally separate it from your panel. So you always want to get underneath the material and pull it up that way. Okay, so now I'm ready to do my first panel install. I'm going to start with a nice, easy, small one, so it's easy to maneuver, handle, and reposition if I need to. Now, I've already given my vehicle a once-over with a dry microfiber cloth just to make sure I've got absolutely everything for dust and dirt off of it, and I've cleaned my fingers before touching it. Also, another pro tip, when you're touching any of the part where your fingertips come in contact with the gel, you want to make sure you don't touch it in a corner, that you actually touch it somewhere like right in here. So for the big door panels, I'll show you when you're handling more in the center. Then this way, if you do get fingerprint oils or any kind of dirt or something minuscule on there, it's not affecting the panel's ability to bond in a corner. And this part is going to be a lot more forgiving because you have a lot more surface area that's going to bond to the vehicle. So let's go with our first install. All right, the first thing I want to do is just hold it by the edges, line it up. And when I think I'm ready for part of it to adhere, I let one part touch. Then this way I can kind of let go and I can make sure that I like the way it's aligned and that it's lined up. When I'm ready to install, now I simply start pressing out air bubbles. Okay, so this one, it looked like it was going to be straight, but now I have a piece here that kind of lifts up over the plastic vent piece. Now, when you're installing your panel, you want to make sure that it's fully flush to the flat parts of the vehicle and no part of the armor is raised or goes over any kind of like a crease, a bump, or over any of the plastic parts. So what I'm going to do is now, like I said, I'm going to get a fingernail underneath the material, not grabbing it by the edge. I'm going to try to not touch the direct corner, but somewhere more on the flat gel part, and I'm going to peel it straight back. Okay, now I'm going to try to install it one more time. Okay, and again, I think I have it lined up. I let just one area of it touch to make it hold, and when I think I've got it, now I start pressing out all of the air bubbles. And usually you want to start pressing out from the inside out or the center out to get the air bubbles moving to the exterior parts of the panel. Beautiful. All right, now we're on to our next panel. So again, when I'm pulling it out of the material, I'm just going to break one of the corners and just start peeling it right out. Okay, now some vehicles have trail badges, some don't. If you don't have any of the trail badges, we have the cutouts in place in the material, but it's the same design as the rest of it. So you could leave these in, or if you need them, then you can take them out. So to take them out, you simply just pop it right through and peel it right off. And that's it. So now when you're lining up more of the complicated pieces that have a lot more parts and pieces, you want to be careful not to let too much of it adhere to the vehicle until you're happy with how it's lined up. So with these pieces, for example, I will first eyeball to make sure the trail badge area is lined up, and then I will make sure that the Jeep part is straight before I let this touch too much on the front quarter panel. All right, so I like the way the Jeep looks. And now I've got the trail badge a little off, but because I didn't really touch it, it's very easy to remove it and relocate it until I am happy. All right. Okay, so from the top down, I'm going to allow this to touch. I'm going to press it down. Got a little air bubble down here, so I'm just going to peel this right back. Again, don't touch right in the corners, touch more on the sides. After I install each panel, I always like to go over it, rubbing it really nicely, just to make sure that any part that I let delicately touch, now I've gone through with a little bit more pressure and force to make sure that that back part of the panel really bonded and connected with my vehicle. Right, next up. These little panels are obviously a small surface area, so they are susceptible to getting gummed up in the edges and the corners. So like when I pulled this one off, I didn't touch the very end of it because I want the very ends to be as pristine and unaffected by my fingerprint oils and any kind of contact debris that I may have placed on there. Because once the edges are connected, the rest of it will stay much more bonded. The key is to make sure any wind-facing edges are not lifting and don't have anything gummed up to it. So these little panels, once I peel this off, I'm just going to try to handle it by the edges. Okay. Now some of these have a design, so you actually have to make sure that you look at the design to see whether it's the top or the bottom and how I'm installing it. Okay. Our new templates actually have these lower areas all broken up into multiple pieces. The reason for that is, like I said, these little panels are more susceptible to being, kicked off or pulled off, especially if you've got rock rails and you're using rock rails to climb in and out of the vehicle. It's really easy to, with your toe, snag one of these and over time create a little a crease in it or just peel it right off. So we've made these so that you can easily replace any damaged panel without affecting the rest of your kit. Now, when you're peeling off the larger panels off your work surface, you want to make sure that the material is always being pulled off in a straight line instead of pulling at corners. Okay, the reason why you don't want to do pulling at corners is you don't want to allow the material to fold in on itself. That could potentially cause damage or a crease in the panel itself. The same applies for when you're peeling it off the vehicle, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean right now. Okay, so as I mentioned, when you're handling the panel, I'm not going to grab any of the corners. I'm going to keep my fingers in bigger, wide, more, like if I'm going to palm right over here instead of trying to grab an edge. And that again is If I have anything that prevents it from perfectly bonding in this area, that's fine, because there's a lot of surface area of this panel to still bond. If I gum up any of the edges and any of the small areas, then potentially that little piece might not bond as well. So this is one of our brand new designs. This is actually a full-size door. A lot of our other designs have dual panels, so it's a single panel for the above the door handle, and then the main panel that covers the door handle and below the door handle. So this is actually my first time installing a full door panel. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to line up, similar like we did to the front quarter panel, one of the main parts of it. So in this, I'm going to line up the door handle first. I'm going to let the material gently touch to hold it in place, and then I'm going to do around the hinges. And once I'm happy around the hinges, then I'm going to fully allow the panel to install. Here's exactly what I mean. So I'm going to get eye level to the door handle. Once I feel like I have it lined up, I'm going to let part of it touch. This is going to allow this part of the panel to be held in place, while now I try to figure out if I have the hinges lined up right. So I'm going to adjust the hinges ever so slightly, and again, I'm going to let part of it touch. Okay, now I have this panel held here and here. I'm going to grab my microfiber cloth, nice clean cloth, and right here where I installed it, I'm actually going to start rubbing this down because I am happy with how it's lined up around the hinges. Okay, I'm not going to press the top just yet because on this particular vehicle, it's straight here and then it has a curve. So I'm going to be really gentle around going around the curve so I don't create a like a pocket of air in the material. So this part, leave alone until you have this part properly bonded. Okay, I'm going to peel this back, and again, I'm going to not touch edge it like the corner. I'm going to touch some big surface area with my fingers, and I'm going to pull this back. The secret to removing these panels is pulling perpendicular to the vehicle, not pulling into itself. Okay, so when I pull away from the vehicle, now this panel, I've barely installed it, so it hasn't had its full time to cure and bond. Typically, the armor takes about 24 to 48 hours to fully make the connection with the vehicle, and then it's considered as strong of a hold as it's going to have. But I'll show you after how you can remove it with that. Okay, so and anywhere around cutouts, I'm very delicate to peel this back. Okay, so I might have to actually start peeling here, just not to put too much force on here and potentially stretch or tear this part of the panel. Okay, so now I have fully pulled back the panel to the part where I started rubbing. I can tell that I don't have any more air bubbles or any parts in there, and all of this is well bonded. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pressing in a fanning up and down motion to get air bubbles out while I hold this part away from the vehicle. And so as I make my way fanning the panel, I'm going to allow more and more of it to make contact with the vehicle while I rub out any of the air bubbles. Okay, so here's what I mean. Okay. Okay, so now I have the main part nicely connected. Now I'm going to do the top. Now when you had the single panels, it was really easy. You would allow it to bond from one end, you would hold it back and just press as you let it go. This one, because it's got the curve, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press up from the center and I'm going to press out from the bottom up to get any bubbles out of my material. Okay, I'm going to give it a nice one more rubbing over, make sure I've got it all nice and smooth and properly installed. Okay, now I feel like we're ready for the main panel. Oh, maybe not. Okay, we're going to carry on our installation. If you can see this, but some of our panels, especially the ones that go over several concurves, what we do is a relief cut. And so what it'll have is it'll have a tiny cut and most likely a little circle. It's important to keep the little circle in there. If it comes out, that's no problem at all. But if you keep it in there, it hides the relief cut a little bit more when you have this on a vehicle that's a contrasting color. So for example, if this was being installed on a black Jeep and you lost the little circle, you probably wouldn't notice it, but on the white one, you might see the little white spot from where the circle is. So we leave these intact, and this allows the material to actually bend and curve and gives it a little bit more flexibility for going around any concurve things. So next on the install. Okay, so you let part of it touch, and then now you're going to go from, oh, that's actually not what I wanted.
We're just going to fast forward through this part. You get the gist of these little panels.
Okay, so when you are handling the larger panels, and they do touch on themselves, it's actually okay with this material. Just really gently pull it back. Now you don't want to, again, like you're pulling it off your vehicle, pull it back down on itself. You want to pull it perpendicular to the other panel, okay? So perpendicular, it'll come across nicely, and you won't damage the panels. Voila. Okay, so the ideal situation is you've got a helper to help you with some of these big panels. But if you don't, the exact same method that I mentioned earlier about letting part of it touch applies, and I'll show you exactly how. Okay, so I'm going to let loosely part of the material touch. This way, this will hold this part into place, and I don't have to worry about this falling and getting dirty while I work on this. Now the key, when you're working with this and you have a clean vehicle, you want to make sure that you also clean the fenders prior to install, because these potentially could come in contact with the fenders, and if you have dirt and dust on here, it's going to connect onto here. So you want to make sure clean fenders, clean vehicle. Now you're going to line up this part here. Okay, let that touch. Let this touch. Now the key to installing the truck bed panel, it needs to go high up on here. And you'll see that as you get closer to the back, the higher it is along this edge, the better it connects. Now before I go any further, I'm going to pull back this area just to make sure that I have this connected well. Okay. This is a filler piece. All right, so now that I've got the front part connected, I'm going to pull back this part that I kind of loosely let touch, and I'm going to hold it out to make sure everything's going to line up and come nicely. As I hold this out, I'm going to start pressing the armor panel down and pressing out the air bubbles. Now, I got to the end and I found that actually I went too high up on this part. So I'm at a bit of an angle. And I kind of should have caught that right in here, but I didn't. So what do? I got to peel this back off. So the exact same technique, pulling it in a straight line, perpendicular to the vehicle, and that's how I'm going to get it off. So again, don't touch the corners. Get your finger underneath there. Pull back any of this part. Straight line and pull straight back. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing again, is let this part just loosely touch. So I have an extra set of hands on this part. Clean my fingers and just be really careful when you're pulling the part that you've pressed down over any small, delicate areas. Okay? Okay, so I've taken that off. Okay, now I'm going to try this one more time. Okay, that actually looks a lot better. So now I'm going to press this down again. Okay, remove this area. That looks way better. So when you're coming across here, if this is off and part of this panel is lifted and not making contact, it's probably going to get dust and dirt underneath it. So it's really important to reposition this until you have every part of the panel perfectly flush on the flat part of the vehicle. Okay, so once I've got this installed, I'm going to extra rub all the edges, make sure I press out any air bubbles, and that every part of this panel has made contact with the vehicle. Now, I do have a couple air bubbles in here. What I can try to do is press these out. But instead, what I'm going to do is peel this section back. So as long as I have a straight line either this way or this way, that's fine. I just, as you notice, I didn't pull just on the corner. I pulled to release this, and then as soon as I could, created my straight line, and perpendicular to the vehicle, I pulled back. Okay, now I'm ready to try this one more time. Beautiful. Okay, one thing you'll find in your kit is we make a lot of logos, flags, and we do have some extra spare pieces. Now these are spare pieces, like I mentioned. Some of these bottom areas you might kick off when you're getting in and out of the vehicle, so save these spares somewhere. What you could do is just cut out this section of panel, leave the backing on, put these away in a nice safe place. Hopefully you don't need them, but if you do, we've got you covered. Okay. Now, the front door panel is notoriously the most complicated, hardest install of the entire kit. Now, as you see, I've left this one for the very end because I just want to make sure that I got a lot of practice working with the material on all the other parts. And now that I'm ready to do the install of the big panel, I've got a lot of confidence built in me because I've seen how the material sticks, I've seen how to put it on, I've seen how to press and which parts to press first, and now I've seen how I can comfortably take it off without causing any damage or crease to the material. So now I'm ready for the big one. So, like I mentioned, there are two methods to installing this. The first one, if I push the material, so through the power of video editing, it has now been 24 hours since I installed this side. I'm going to show you the technique for removing the panels, and I'm going to start with the front door because this is usually the one that gives everyone the most hassle. It is the biggest bonding surface area, so after about 24 to 48 hours, this is installed really well and the hold is very, very strong. Now, the reason why we have the hold so strong is for a few reasons. Obviously, the first one is, if you're putting this on in your garage and you're overlanding or heading, really far to get to a trail, we want to make sure that this is rated for any speed that you drive on the freeway. And then most importantly, this is removable trail armor. So when you're in a tight, overgrown, really brushy trail, the last thing we want to happen is for one of these panels to come off, get snagged or bunched or anything like that, exposing the vehicle's paint to scrapes and scratches. So this is why the hold is really strong. But if you follow the instructions for proper removal, you don't need as much strength as you think. Okay, so let's get started. So number one, clean hands. Always, anytime you're gonna handle your armor, very, very clean hands. Okay, now I'm gonna start with this side here, and I'm gonna get a finger underneath the gel. Do not snag by the edges, okay? And I'm not gonna touch any of the corners. I'm gonna try to touch inside the material, okay? So we're gonna pull back piece by piece. Also, it's really important when you're pulling these off, do not pull the corners back in on themselves. When you do that, especially if this has been on for a little while and the bond is really strong, what you might do is stretch the material. The ideal temperature of working with this material is somewhere between 65 plus. So if you're in colder climates and you want to take this on or put this on, just keep in mind that the material might be a little bit rigid and firm. So when you're pulling it off, especially when you're pulling it off in the cold, it might be susceptible to stretch. So we definitely don't want that. I'll cover in the end of this video what to do if you did stretch a piece of the material. There's a really easy fix for that as well. Okay, so continuing on. Okay, so now I've got 3 sections off. I'm going to gently pull them until they're roughly even. Just being really careful not to stretch any of the curves. Now, I've got a straight line like I was saying. So I'm going to start pulling straight back. Now, all I'm doing is just putting my body weight backwards while I have a good hold on the panel. As you can see, it is coming off. It does take a little bit of force, but like I said, I'm not going to pull it this way. I'm definitely not going to use my tire as a kickoff point. All I'm going to do is straight line, perpendicular to the vehicle, and I'm just going to lean back. Okay, now I'm going to slow down. As I get to the end piece, where I have smaller cut areas, weaker parts of the material, I want to make sure that I'm pulling back really delicately, and I'm not going to stretch any of these areas that have cutouts. Okay? And voila, I have removed my panel without creasing it, without bending it, or any kind of damage at all. And so when you do it exactly like this, it's not that hard to take off. Okay? All right, now we're going to put it back on. So if the material sticks on itself, perpendicular to the material, there we go. It comes off, no issues at all. Okay, so like we covered earlier with the technique, I'm going to line up the door handle and the key lock, and I'm going to just delicately let the material touch in one spot. Now, I'm going to line up the hinges, make sure I'm happy. Okay, now I'm going to delicately let it touch right here. Microfiber cloth. Okay, now I have this front side really well bonded. So I'm going to peel back this area. Okay, and I've got it pulled back to where I can already feel it's very well bonded. Now, again, fanning motion from one side to the other, from the inside to the outside, pushing all the air bubbles out to the edges. Got an air bubble in there. And well, so we have two base colors of material, clear and white. White is typically used for solid print, and clear is used where we're going to use a mix of printed area and clear sections, allowing the color of the vehicle to be a part of the design. Now, as you saw in multiple demonstrations, our material is installed dry, which means that you most likely will get a tiny champagning of bubbles kind of throughout. This works itself out usually when you've been out in the sun for a couple of hours, and the nice part about having a mix of clear and print is if you do have some stubborn bubbles that you can't get out and you don't want to take the panel off to push them out, you can always just press them underneath the printed part and then you don't see them in the clear. All right, now that you've got your armor on, there are a couple maintenance and cleaning tips that I'd like to share. The very first one is when you install your armor, you need 24 to 48 hours to let it completely bond. That means you cannot get it wet within that first 48 hours. One of the cleaning features of our material is when the sticky side gets wet, it turns into a smooth plastic. That allows you to wash off and rinse off any debris that's stuck to it. If you have discoloration or fingerprint oils or any kind of oil, other oils that are stuck to it, you can use a mild dish soap. So I recommend taking these panels off, getting it into a sink, rinsing it well with water, getting it wet until the sticky turns into a smooth that you can feel, applying a mild dish soap, and literally just rubbing it out. When you get that Tupperware squeaky clean shine, then the armor is clean and you can rinse all the soap off and let it air dry. It has to be completely dry, and the the vehicle has to be completely dry before you can reinstall the armor. When the armor is on and it is fully bonded, you can actually wash the vehicle. You can spray, you can hand wash, and you can also drive through automatic car washes. The one thing that you're going to want to watch out for, especially if you live in a high humidity or very wet area, is that you don't get moisture trapped between the vehicle and the armor. So if you've driven through water fordings or big rainstorms, or it's just rained the whole week, you do want to take off the armor, make sure everything is clean and dry, and then put it back on a clean and dry vehicle. Now let's talk storage. All right, so each of your kits comes with extra clear plastic. Now this is found inside the center core rolled in the materials, so please don't throw this out unless you've got another storage solution. The best storage solution I can offer actually is our carry and storage bag. Now this is full with a set of Gladiator armor in here. It weighs about 25 pounds at the most, with a full Gladiator kit inside. The kit itself is maybe about 5 pounds. This is rolled large, but you can roll it anything from a 12 to 15-inch diameter down into a 3 or 4-inch diameter. So this is a really wonderful storage solution. To store your panels in here, this bag, you undo the buckles, unroll the bag. There's individual sheets that are sewn into one side. You'll fold the sheets back, you'll insert the armor image side down, sticky side up. Same thing with if you use the magnetic armor, image side down, magnet side up. You cover each layer of panels with one of the sheets, and then once you've got all of your armor pieces inside, then you roll it, buckle it, and then store it until you're ready to use it again. All right, now this comes to the final part of our video and frequently asked questions. So we get a few. The first one is, how long can I leave my armor on? And so this is removable trail armor. This is not a wrap. This is designed to take off periodically to clean and refresh the hold on it. So as you'll see that the armor panels are quite thick. So you do have a little tiny ledge along each of the pieces, so you can get an accumulation of dirt, dust, and road scum that kind of builds up into there. So you want to make sure that you keep that and the vehicle clean. Also, especially with the hood armor, if you're parked out in the sun, the majority of clear coats and paint these days are very resilient to fading in the sun, but it is possible that if you leave this on for a very, very long time, you might get fading around the panels and then the original color underneath. So you definitely don't want that. Right, the next question we get is, can you install this on ceramic coating? So we kind of handled that a little earlier with the detail chemicals. So nowadays, ceramic coating is a silica-based, which the armor can adhere to without an issue. If you have ceramic coatings from back in the day that they used ingredients such as Teflon inside of there, those types of ingredients chemically prevent anything from bonding to it. So what I recommend is, if you don't know where you got the ceramic coating or what they put on top of it, to do a test is you can order one of our MEK Nano-Hold technology logos, and then you can apply it on any part of the door. Now you can try to treat the door first by using the alcohol, isopropyl alcohol mixture to wash that area, let that dry, put the logo on, give it 24 to 48 hours. If you don't see that air bubbles have formed underneath it, and if it's still really tough to peel off around the edges, then you know that the armor will most likely bond. If you do have an issue with it, what you could do is try to clean the rest of the area with the diluted isopropyl alcohol, or sometimes just going through a car wash 4 to 5 times if you have a brand new ceramic coating seems to clean off whatever they coated the top of it with, to the point where the armor can bond with no problem. But I definitely recommend do a test first, and we've got really inexpensive samples of our material with the logos that you can test this out with. All right, I also get some maintenance questions as far as, you've installed the armor and you have lifted sections. So like I said, it takes about 24 to 48 hours for the armor to fully bond. So during that time, what I recommend is, if you're going to go if you're going to drive somewhere, around your vehicle, bring a microfiber cloth with you, and for the first 48 hours, just kind of as you walk by, just give it a good rub, especially around the edges, corners, and wind-facing edges. That just makes sure that everything underneath has been pressed down. If you had any of the champagning bubbles that are working their way out, they're not, lifting any of the material as they're making their way out from underneath the material, and you've got a really good hold. If you do have, if you've had your armor for a little while and you have corners that are lifting up, now that's a really good indication that you've probably handled them with fingers. You've got fingerprint oils underneath there, that section of panel didn't fully bond. So it may have been just a minuscule bit lifted off the vehicle, which now allowed dust and dirt to kind of get in there and settle in between the vehicle and the armor. So what I would recommend is you peel that area back, probably an extra 4 or 5 inches, give that whole area a really good wash. Now, if you've got a mild dish soap, cleaning mixture like I recommended, that works well as well. But if you've got really stubborn oils that the dish soap is not removing, there's actually, if you mix a little bit of lemon juice with water, rinse that area, rub it off, and then try to use the cleaning solution on top of that. That usually dislodges all the oils and gets that nice and clean. With that panel removed down, you can pat dry the area and the vehicle with a non-lint kitchen towel, and then let that section fully air dry before you press it back in. Now, another thing, if you have a corner lifting and it just will not stay down no matter what, there's a really good chance that that section of material was stretched, either when it was being removed or installed during colder weather, or just when it was repositioned and it had a little too much force on that section. So what you would do is you need to relax the material in the opposite direction of how it's curling. And so again, what you do, peel back that area and then tightly roll it in the opposite direction of the curl. Leave that for a couple of minutes. What I do is I usually have a little piece of painter's tape or something like that. I'll roll this section in the opposite. If it's curling this way, I roll it this way. And then I just put a little piece of tape, leaving it rolled, and let it sit like that for a few minutes. That'll let the material relax and remove the tension from that stretch. And then once you unroll it, just press it right into the vehicle. If it was a really aggressive curve, you can use that little piece of painter's tape to help hold this down for the next 24 to 48 hours to give the material its time to properly bond with the vehicle, and that should take care of that without an issue. So now what happens if I damage a panel beyond repair? If it is a small area, you can just cut that off. You just won't have coverage in that little part that obviously you've cut off. But the rest of the panel, if it is bonding well, that's no problem to just have little sections of it trimmed off. If you do want a whole replacement panel, we have replacement parts on our website. So you can just go on the replacement parts section, select the vehicle model, select your panel that you need. If the design that you have is not listed or you had a custom design, in the order notes, so break down what design you have or the order number that you've had. And I also recommend follow up with an email saying, hey, this is my replacement parts order number, and here's a picture of my vehicle with the armor on. Then this way, if we've changed designs or colors over the years, we can make sure that we try to best match the design that you have. Thank you so much for your time and attention for watching this video. You wouldn't carry your phone without a case, so why hit the trails without removable trail armor? If you have any other questions or need any information at all, please don't hesitate to reach out at mekmagnet.com. Thank you for watching.